Okay, very good. So, hello everyone. I think we should start this Hangout by welcoming everyone, all 37 people that I can see online. My name is Areti Manataki. I'm one of the course organizers, one of the teachers in the Code Yourself course. And with me today is Ben. Ben, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Ben Clavier, and I'm one of the TA on CodeYourself, and I'm a PhD student at Edinburgh Uni undergrad here, actually.
So Ben is looking after our discussion forums and making sure everything works well in the course. So this is really, really good. So perhaps before we go through the different topics that we thought we could discuss today, just to explain what this is about and how we're structuring the session and how the technology works. So the whole idea of Hangouts is really just an opportunity for us as a class to get together. So that includes both teachers and learners, and discuss anything related to coding. So that could be questions you have about Scratch, it could be questions you have about the course, or anything computing related that you would like to discuss. So that's the purpose of the session. The structure of the session is basically we're going to remind ourselves a little bit about the course and how it works. Tell you a little bit about some very fun and interesting discussions in the forums. And then we're going to move on to some of the questions that you put up in the Hangout. So, and we'll take it from there. We'll see if there's more time to answer any questions you add in the chat now. Amazing. If not, we'll have more to discuss in the forums. Okay. Yes, so Ben is clarifying that you can use the chat for any questions you might have. Let me explain a little bit how this environment works, okay? Because you haven't all seen that. So I'll go back to the first slide. First of all, if you're not using the Chrome browser, just to say that it's not sure that it's going to work in a different browser. I've had quite a few problems in the past with other browsers. So the recommended one is Chrome. So if you're not using Chrome, please exit the session and try to enter again. It might make things easier for you. Just to remind everyone that this session is being recorded, and our plan is to make it available on YouTube so that other learners that might have missed it can watch it later on. And how are you expected to interact with us? Okay, so as you can see at the bottom right-hand side of your screen, there are a few icons. Now, the first one looks like a speech bubble, and that's the one for the chat. If you can't see the different icons, you need to click on this arrow-like looking icon, and then you'll get the Collaborate panel. And once you open that panel, you'll be able to see the speech bubble icon, and that's the chat. So if you click on that, you should be able to access all the discussions or the messages that people have posted. So already I can see a few messages there from Fabio, from Debbie, Tauha, Alexandra, Tulip, and so forth. Tulip, for example, is saying, I'm using Safari on mobile. I hope that works. If it doesn't, you might need to use a different browser. We'll wait and see.
Yeah, if it works with what
yes,
you're
Ben.
using, don't feel obligated to change. It just Collaborate is optimized for Chrome, so it might crash on Safari at some point or things like that. But if it's working for you, don't feel obligated to download Chrome or anything. You should be fine.
Absolutely. And also just to clarify that the plan is for Ben and I to show our faces and use the mic. I'm afraid in your case, the only way to interact with us and each other is through the chat. We thought it might make things a little bit easier to manage, especially given that we have quite a few people here. So how can you use the chat? Feel free to type whenever and whatever you want, as long as you're kind to each other. So you don't need to wait for us to ask you to type in the chat. You can just do that throughout the session. Our plan is to discuss a few of the questions that you have in the Hangout forum, and then perhaps a few from this chat as well. So we'll try our best to keep an eye on the chat. Also, please remember that the chat will also be recorded as part of the session. So whatever you write there might be visible to other people later on. Oh, and just so you know, at the end of the session, the way to leave the session is to either close the tab on your browser or click on the menu icon on the top left side of your screen, and then select Leave Session. By the way, if anyone is having trouble hearing us, there's also the option to call a number that is a UK-based number. So if you click on that menu icon as well, you'll be able to choose the use your phone for audio option. So it's there for anyone that might have bandwidth issues. Okay, I think that's enough with logistics. I suggest we get started. So I think I'll stop sharing those slides now. Yeah, so you can see Ben and I. Okay, so I thought first I'd remind everyone what this is about. Okay, this course is an introductory programming course. Our aim with this course is to share our passion for programming and computer science and show you that programming is relevant to the real world. It can be fun to do, and you don't need to be a genius or I don't know, a geek or someone that really likes math to do some programming. There are all sorts of people that enjoy programming and use it in their work life or in their free time. So we use a programming language called Scratch, which was designed for children and young teenagers, but we found that it works really well with adults as well, especially for introductory concepts. We cover basic programming in Scratch, and we talk about computational thinking, so things like abstraction and decomposition. We talk about software engineering, so the importance of testing your code, and maintenance and documentation. So you've learned that you need to perhaps add some comments in your code in Scratch. What else we learned? Oh, I thought I'd mention a couple of games that we cover in the course. Games that we've learned how to program in Scratch, which I think are really cool. So if you're on week 1, for example, and you can't wait to try something fun, you might as well have a look at week 2, where we show you how to build a program for the Fruit Ninja game, which I think is really cool. And it's actually, the code is quite simple. It works quite well. And another game that I like very much is the Catch the Mouse in week 4. And there, I think the whole idea is how to learn to define procedures and use them. So we define a block that is called jump. And that is something that programmers do every day. They define their own functions or their own procedures, and then they call them. They make their characters to follow those new blocks, for example, follow those new instructions. Some people have been asking, oh, how big is the course? How many people are there online? And I can tell you that, so the course has been running for about 5 years now. And we are now over 112,000 people enrolled. And definitely in the last month, there have been more and more people joining, which is something that we're very, very excited about. So I had a look at the greetings and introductions forum this morning, and I saw people introducing themselves from different parts of the world. So just to say, I saw Ed from Washington, D.C. saying hello, Charisse from Barbados, Roy from Indonesia, Soina from Jamaica, and Kate from Nottingham in the UK. And was saying that she took this course because she works as a project manager, and at work she needs to work with developers. And she wanted to understand how, what it is that they do and learn to speak the same language. So yeah, that sounds really great. I hope, Kate, this course provides this for you. I think that's, last thing I wanted to mention about the course. and as an overview, part of the overview of the course, is that you have been attending most probably the English-speaking version of the course, the one called Code Yourself, An Introduction to Programming. Now there's another one, Spanish brother or sister, called A Programar, Una Introducción a la Programación. So this course, both courses, were developed in collaboration between Horta Universidad Uruguay, a university in Uruguay, and the University of Edinburgh. So that's why we have an English-speaking version and a Spanish-speaking version. So if you're curious about the Spanish-speaking version, you can look it up on the Coursera platform as well. Okay, I think that's enough with me talking. Ben, I know you've been keeping an eye on the forums, so maybe you can tell us a little bit about some questions that people have been asking, and anything you want to share?
Yeah, so a question that's come up quite often is, can I run Scratch somewhere that's not the Scratch website? Can I make an app? Can I send what I've made to my mom? Can I send it just to showcase to people? And the answer to that is you can, but not officially. Scratch itself, as in like Scratch is made by MIT and it's a tool to learn programming, and they've not made anything to be exported. But Scratch, when it's broken down, it's essentially just a big file that is called JSON file that we use quite a lot for configuration, that tells Scratch what blocks exactly you're using. And people have made tools to interpret those blocks and convert them to JavaScript. JavaScript is a scripting language that you see on most browsers. For instance, Collaborate that you're on right now, the video works thanks to JavaScript. And pretty much anything interactive on the internet works on JavaScript. So JavaScript runs on every device. You can have it on your phone. It's not an application, but you can still go to a website and have your Scratch app running on your phone. You can have it. You can just run it on any browser. So there are some tools like that, and we'll be posting the link to both versions because there's one for Scratch 2 called Phosphorus, and one for Scratch 3 called Fork-Forus. And it's a pun because in computer science, when you fork something, it's when you take some code and modify it further. So we'll be making both of those available, but the answer is, yeah, you can run your Scratch code anywhere you want. It takes an extra step, you need to code project, but it is definitely doable, and we'll be sharing that because quite a lot of you have been asking about that.
Very good, thank you. And these are questions that came up in the Hangout thread, right, Ben?
Yeah.
And was there anything else that you might want to share about discussions in the forums or frequently asked questions, perhaps?
There's not been too many issues, I think. If any of you in the chat have got problems, the most questions we've seen outside the Hangouts question thread are really about like assignments and why are you not getting marked on time, or why is your assignment marked one way or the other. And the answer to this is that because it's peer grading, everything is really handled in the background by Coursera. So your assignment, you submit it, sent to a few other learners, and you get assignments from a few other learners. But not everyone has time, or not everyone remembers, or just not everyone can mark a lot of assignments. So it sometimes happens that it takes a while before the person can do it, or they just can't do it. So really, the only thing we can suggest in this case is that you just submit it. You can. It's perfectly fine. You won't get deducted any marks if you have to post your project again. I know it's a bit annoying. It's just a small hurdle, but it's a Coursera issue, and that would be perfectly fine. Then I've got a third question that I found quite interesting by Moaz Hamad on the Hangout thread, who asked, so how can I give my sprites a more real-life feel? Because he wants his sprites to move 10 steps. But when you make them move 10 steps at once, they teleport. Essentially, they go 10 steps forward. And so he's asking if there is a way to make them move quite realistically. And so the answer is that yes, and it's a really good thing because it teaches you about the, while doing so, it teaches you about the control blocks that we're trying to explain to you how to use in the course. The way you would do this is instead of moving 10 steps at once, you would have a loop that will loop from 0 to 10 or 0 to 9. And just move one step every time. And if you want to give it a real-life feel, you could even have an animation so that for every step, one foot would go forward and the next foot would go forward and so on. So yes, you can give. There's a lot to do to give your sprite and to give all your animations a really real-life feel.
And on this note, just to say that I think we've learned in the course how useful it might be for a sprite to have different costumes and include that in the loop. So it moves one step, it switches costume. It moves another step, it switches costume. So it looks like it's actually walking or flying and so forth.
Yeah, so there's a few questions in the chat about, do we have a follow-up with another programming language like JavaScript, or most people are asking for Python? So the answer is that we don't have one ourselves, and I don't think RIT has one planned at the moment. But there are very helpful resources. There's a lot of course on Coursera and edX, which will teach you Python from not a completely beginner level, but that just assumes the basic level of understanding that you should have from CodeYourself. So do we have some recommendations? Or we might put them on the forum, maybe. That's
Yeah, that would be great. We can definitely put a couple of recommendations in the forums. And just to say, there are many courses on Python, for example, which we think is a very good language as a next step. Very many courses and really good courses as well. So we didn't feel there was a gap there, and that's why we haven't put one together, to be honest. There are courses available on Coursera, on edX, which is a different platform, like Ben mentioned, and there are even other platforms that could work for some learners and their needs, like Data Camp. They have data science courses, Udacity, and others. So in a way, the challenge is, out of all these courses, which one works for you? Yeah.
Yeah,
And Fabio is saying in the forum, Udemy as well. True.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that there's any course for Python that is like the best, like that's absolutely the best. There's, for instance, a very famous one would be Harvard CS50X, but a lot of people are really happy with it, and it goes really in depth into computer science concepts, and some people really hate it. It's when you reach that level, it's at the stage where you need to find basically what course is the best for you to learn. So it's perfectly okay to like sign up to 3 or 4. Try to see the first week and see which one you actually enjoy, because what's important that you enjoy learning this. So because it's really hard to stay motivated when you're just learning online. So don't feel discouraged if you pick one that people are saying is good and you're like, oh, I don't get this, or it's not my style. That's perfectly fine. Just try another one until you find one that you really want to stick with.
Absolutely. I couldn't put it better myself. Yes. So Aisha is asking Ben to speak more slowly, and I have to say, yeah, I need to speak a bit more slowly too, because sometimes in these sessions I get excited and then I speak fast. So Ben, yeah, you and I need to slow down.
It's easy to speak too fast when you're just speaking to the computer.
Yes, yeah. We'll remind each other, ¿vale? Okay, so anything else from the forums that you might want to share with us?
I don't think I have anything else in mind right now.
Okay. In my case, I was having a look again this morning at the different discussions, and I thought there were a few interactions that I thought were really great. A lot of fun, and kind of showed the spirit of the course. So I thought I'd share them with you. Okay. So the first one that stood out for me was a post titled "Guess the Object Through Algorithm." By Nandika Agarwal, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. So that was about a week ago, and basically Nandika put together an algorithm using English, where he described, he gave us instructions for drawing an object, and then people had to guess. So people did try to guess, and there were 3 different answers. There was swastika saying, I got something shaped like a burger. Then Ishan said, is it a pipe? And Kate said, a cylinder. Good instructions, though, very clear and precise. So I thought that was a good discussion, because different people tried it. They came up with different things. So now I'm hoping that Nandika will get back to us and give us the right solution. So yeah, I think that's the one I thought would be good to share. Am I correct in thinking, Ben, that very often there are questions about version 2 and version 3 in Scratch?
Yes, they have been a bit less common recently, but we still do get quite a lot of questions between version 2 and version 3 because it's a bit daunting because you go to the MIT website and you get Scratch 3, but we're using Scratch 2 in the course, which is not the same. Like there's small differences everywhere, and that's really the kind of stuff that can really throw you off when you're not used to it. So the short answer is you can use either. If you want, you can still download Scratch 2 from the MIT website, and you will just have the exact same version of Scratch as MIT is using in the course. Or if you're more comfortable with Scratch 3, because maybe there's more resources online or anything like that, it's also fine to use Scratch 3, and we accept assignment in both Scratch 2 and 3. So you won't get marked down or anything if you're using the wrong version, because there's no wrong version, essentially.
That's exactly right. And I noticed one of the questions in the chat just now saying, it's a question from Randy, and he's saying, will you update the course to take advantage of new features of Scratch version 3? And the answer is very hopefully yes. So it's a matter of finding the resources and incorporating the changes. But yes, this is something that we would very much like to do. We know that the course can still work as it is, but I think our learners would appreciate it, updating it. So we do have it in mind, and hopefully in a few months' time we'll have some news. Okay, anything else, Ben, about discussions in the forums, or shall I move on to some news related to the course?
Yeah, I think we can move on. And we'll be answering some questions from the chat as well as we go along. So do feel free to keep chatting and asking us.
Yes, please, yeah. So in the last Hangout that we had sometime around March, I believe, we announced that we were going to run a coding workshop as part of the Edinburgh International Science Festival, which we've been running for a few years now. It's called Game On. Now, unfortunately, the Edinburgh Science Festival was cancelled because of the coronavirus pandemic. But the team in the Edinburgh Science Festival did a really, really good job at putting together, at sort of last minute, a digital version of the Science Festival. So we offered our Game On workshop, which is a coding workshop for kids aged 8 to 14, 15. So we offered a digital version. So I'm mentioning this not that necessarily for you taking the course, but maybe you have children or you have younger brothers or sisters that would just like to spend maybe an hour or a couple of hours trying their hand at programming. So what we're doing there is reusing some of the videos of the course and complementing them with some additional activities to get your hand around what an algorithm is, what computer science is about, and how to put programming into good use. So things like that. So what I'm going to do now is I'll share the URL of the Game On site on the Edinburgh Science Festival, and you can share it with anyone you like. So I'll just type it in the chat. There it is. And we'll also share it in the Hangout forum for anyone that is curious. And one other point that I thought would be worth emphasizing is the fact that the course has an appropriate Creative Commons license, which allows people to reuse and adapt. So the course license is a Creative Commons attribution, non-commercial, no derivatives. So what this means basically is that you're welcome to share, to copy and redistribute the materials that we have in the course in any medium. So you can reuse them in your classroom, you can print them out and share them with friends or family members. as long as you're including a reference or an attribution to us, a link to the license, and indicate if any changes were made. So further information about the course license can be found on week 1 of this course. But really just to say that we thought that this license would be good because we want our materials to be reused. We want to share this with the rest of the world. And if there are any ways that you can make them work for them and remix or adapt to your needs, amazing, please do. I know there are quite a few teachers following the course, so this is really, really for you to make good use of. Let's see what else we can talk about. Let's see if there's anything. Right, so Randy's asking, would love to invite my grade 7 to 9 students to try your workshop. So the game on workshop, the one I just mentioned, it's now at a self-paced mode. So if you follow the link, Randy, you'll be able to see the different steps. So feel free to use those resources and anything else in the course you like. Okay, I'm conscious of time, so it's almost past, and we don't want to overrun. So maybe the last couple minutes, Ben, we can talk a little bit about how computer science, computing, and programming is used under this pandemic. So I know different countries are at a different stage with the pandemic, but it's a global issue, and there are efforts throughout the world to understand the disease, come up with a solution, and support the people that are stuck at home or working in the front line of hospitals, for instance. So is there any other good cases that you would like to share with us?
Well, obviously, like computer science has been really involved in the whole of the current situation because everything you see about trying to predict how it will evolve and things are computer models. There are programmers working with epidemiologists that make the best possible assumptions about what could happen. A very interesting, I think, case as well has been DeepMind's AlphaFold. And I don't know if you're familiar with DeepMind, but they're a research company that has been acquired by Google. They're based in London and they're really famous for AlphaGo. You might remember the news story a few years back where there was an AI that could beat professional Go players when Go is a really complex game. Well, the new project is called AlphaFold, and AlphaFold is doing protein folding, which is essentially see all the shapes that protein can take. And they've been putting all of their research effort towards identifying the potential folds of protein that are associated with the new virus that could occur when the new virus is there in many cases. And they've been sharing this data with a lot of medical teams across the world. And I think that's really interesting because you don't particularly expect like computer scientists to be doing protein folding or to work on understanding how protein interacts with viruses. But actually, computer science is really present in most things these days. And I think that's a really good example of that.
Yes, and another example where computer programming is used, I suppose, is around all this computer modeling that people are talking about. So making predictions about how the disease might spread. So epidemiologists typically run simulations. So many people think of simulations as, pilot simulations. So instead of working with a real airplane, you learn how to operate it through a simulated environment. So mathematical computer-based simulations are similar in the sense that you're not experimenting with the actual thing or environment, but instead you have this safe space where you're playing with numbers and say, ooh, what if we have 100 cases right now? Let's see what the effect will be in 5 days. And now let's change these 100 cases. What if today we had 1,000 cases? So computer-based simulation is used for lots of different things. I use it in my research looking at patient flows. Other people have used it to model supply chains. So there are all sorts of areas where it can be used in chemical engineering as well. So epidemiology is one of those areas where computer modeling can be useful. And do people there use algorithms? Yes, they do. But typically they are fed with quite a lot of data. So what matters in that case is both the algorithm and the quality of the data that is an input to those algorithms, so as to get a good output. Yeah, I think this is more or less all we have time for right now. There are so many good questions and comments in this chat that I think what we'll do is keep a note of them and pick a few that we think most people will be curious about and discuss them in the Hangout thread. How does that sound, Ben?
Sounds good. Definitely do keep asking your questions here or ask them on the forum, and in a couple of days I think we'll try to compile frequently asked questions post where we'll try to answer most of them quite well. Right after this live, I'll be posting on the forum the link to the Scratch compiler, because I saw a few people ask for it, where you can just link your project and get a JavaScript version of it. And we'll be answering more questions afterward.
Brilliant, thank you. Then before we go, perhaps I should remind everyone that, well, we're very happy that you're taking the course. We're really excited to be looking at checking your discussions in the forums. And we always want to hear from you. What do you think about the course? What do you think we could or should improve? What do you think works well? So please do rate us on the Coursera platform, and do fill in those surveys that we circulate at the beginning of the course and at the end of the course if possible. We highly appreciate your feedback. In fact, we've improved the course over the last few years based on feedback we got. So we're very curious to hear what you think. Ben, unless there's anything else, I think it's time to say goodbye. What do you think?
Yeah, well, thank you everyone for coming, and thank you everyone for taking the course, obviously. And all your questions were really interesting, so it was really nice to see that so many people are interested in finding out what's going on, essentially.
Thank you for joining us, and hope to see you in the forums. Goodbye.
Goodbye.